All right, so today, fresh crack of the Bridgeland Distillery Tabor Corn Bourbon, Canadian bourbon. Let me clear it's bourbon, absolutely bourbon. So this is a distillery out of the Bridgeland Distillery in Calgary. This is a double barrel Tabor Corn bourbon. And this is aged back to back in number 4 New Charred American Oak barrels. The authentic bourbon, that's right. And this particular bottle, though, is a single barrel, single cask select from BSW Liquor at 100 proof or 50% alcohol. And this distillery is independently owned, as far as I know. And Tabor Corn, I'm assuming, comes from the Johnston farm, which produces the Tabor corn in Alberta. So it's also Alberta corn, if that matters to you. Now the mash bill is 60% Tabor corn, 32 barley, and 8 wheat. So no rye in this. Very high barley content. And of course, it is aged in 2 new virgin American oak barrels. So this is Canadian bourbon by any other name, Canadian bourbon. And we're cracking this thanks to the redemption of Mr. Bentorius. Thank you for your redemption. Let's see, how the fuck do we get this off, though? That's the question. Is it all plastic? It seemed like there was a hole on top I could pick at, but maybe not. Maybe we've got to do it this way. Now, I haven't had anything from this particular distillery before, but apparently they have all kinds of other like non-whiskey products and stuff like that, and other whiskey products. I did hear from another content creator, if you will. They have a similar spirit that's in like that's got like I think it's port finished or something like that. So that would be like the Canadian Angel's Envy, I guess. That was not available when I purchased this, though. I kind of want to take all this plastic off just because it's like cut in a way that's kind of annoying, but we might just leave it if it's annoying to take off. Oh, you fucker. Well, let me just leave this for now. It doesn't interfere with us pouring it. All right. So, of course, we have our very Canadian Shelter Point single malt Glen here. This is like kind of a smaller bottle, too, so it's like a little hard to hold on to. It just freaking splashed me, dude. Holy shit. I didn't know I was in the splash zone. Fuck. Holy. I can feel like this is like going to be a nightmare to pour, too. It's literally all over me. That's how bourbons say hello, yeah. Yeah, this bottle sucks to pour. 100. It is definitely a fake cork, too. Well, that was interesting. Freaking got sprayed, dude. All right. So to be clear, okay, this is bourbon, but because it's not bourbon, and it is in fact bourbon, I'm not 100% sure if this is uncolored. It was put in 2 virgin oak barrels for some amount of time, so it's probably that's probably the right color, but I don't know for sure. They may have not upheld that, but it's probably colored with maple syrup. It's probably natural color, but technically there's no rule that says Canadian bourbon couldn't be colored. There's also technically no rule that says Canadian bourbon couldn't have vodka in it, or wine, or rum. But we just assume that it's 100% Canadian bourbon. I don't think they used the rule. It doesn't say Canadian. Actually, it doesn't even say Canadian whiskey on there. So, what even is this? It just says Tabor Corn Bourbon. It doesn't even say Canadian whiskey or anything. So the only standard we can hold this to is the fact that it's bourbon. That's the only standard. It doesn't even say Canadian whiskey. So as far as we know, it could be colored and flavored with maple syrup, but I doubt it. All right. Whew. It just smells like syrup. The alcohol is a little bit aggressive. It's very syrupy. There is some like nod to the grains in here though, but it's like heavy dark sweetness with a little bit of grain. The like sweetness is like right out front though. Like a lot of times with actual Kentucky bourbon, it's like a little bit spicy and a little bit oaky, and you get some of those like maybe cherry notes or something like that. Sometimes you get like some cornbread, buttery corn characteristic, and then like a little bit after you get more of the sweet character starts to roll in. This is just sweet right off the gate, like right immediately. It's not got a lot of oak presence to it, despite being double barreled. It's not really very oaky. But it's not wholly complex either. It's kind of like just has like a dark, syrupy sweetness, and like a nod to like that corn and malt in there. Definitely some vanilla. So it's like table syrup, vanilla, corn and malt. That's about where we're at with this. So it's not super duper expressive though. It's not like super intense aromas. And it is kind of like coming across a little heated. Like sometimes I'm getting in there looking for flavor and I get singed a little bit, which is not optimal. But I think this is both not that old and aged in Canada. So there might not be that much cask taming going on, I suppose, but at least enough to get this color, assumingly. All right. On the palate, Tabor Corn Bourbon. Canadian bourbon. Cheers. Okay. It drinks way hotter than 50. I'm guessing this is a little young. I don't know how old this is, but it drinks pretty hot for 50%. That being said, the flavor is kind of odd. Finish is really quite on the short side. I was expecting like, hey, you're going to get like some sweetness and spice and oak, and then that will be your palate. But it's like a little bit sweet, and then there's like red fruits in it. Like almost like plum. Like it's really kind of odd. Like plum or dark cherries. Something like that is very strange. It's like a sweet dark cherry, but just for a minute. Just for like a little bit. Let me get some water. Palate's a little weird. So it's way less sponge toffee than that other one. This thing was like straight up liquid sponge toffee. This thing here, but this is like, again, that's a Canadian whiskey. You know, this is a Canadian bourbon. It's a little different. It's just all the sweetnesses. It's just really sweet on the nose. I'm not really getting like much else with that. My guess though is this is pretty young. Does this have any clue to how old this is? I mean, it's old enough that it was put in 2 different barrels, right? Like it's got to be at least 4 years old, right? Like 2 years a barrel or something. Maybe 3 years on one barrel, one barrel on another. It's hitting really young though, for me. But there is like an unmistakable dark red fruit character to this. I like dark cherries. Yeah, this is a neck pour. This is a small bottle too. It's a 500 milliliter, but man, I don't know. It's kind of a little funky. It's just very sweet, a little bit untamed, a little bit fiery. There's like some kind of red, dark red fruit, like a plum or a dark cherry. Definitely some vanilla going on in there. Finish is so short. Finish is like a flash in the pan. It's like a little bit of oak whispers in. You get some sweetness, and it's like gone. It's just gone. But the palate's kind of a little, it's got a little weird stuff going on. It is definitely not like a bourbon. It's definitely not like straight up a bourbon. It's like, it's got like a Canadian whiskey sweetness, with a weird like fruity part in it. It has like vanilla, like we'll say like the vanilla and like the sweet notes are bourbon-esque. It doesn't really have the same oak character. It's like a little bit oaky on the finish, but there's like a weird like red fruit element to me. What did they say about it? Aromas of sponge toffee, maple syrup, blackstrap molasses, and sweet charred oak. Buttery caramel and vanilla cream on the front of the tongue. Peppery notes mid-palate. Yeah, some pepper is fair. I like that. Brown sugar sweetness that develops on the finish. Not really. Pretty much what I read was sweet note, sweet note, sweet note, sweet note with oak, sweet note, vanilla, pepper, sweet note. Which is fair. To me, the sweetnesses aren't like that different. Like it's kind of like it has a sweet characteristic, and every time you kind of taste the sweet character, it's mostly just that same sweetness, which to me is hitting kind of like a table syrup. But I don't know. For me, for sure, there's a dark fruit in this. And the malt and corn show up on the nose, but it reminds me like more of a Canadian whiskey than it reminds me of a bourbon. But it's a little different than your typical Canadian whiskey. It's a weird. It's a bit weird. It's a bit different. I guess that's what I wanted. And of course, this is a single barrel pick, right? So if you get like the typical, probably batch blended Tibercorn 101 bourbon, it's going to be a little different than this. This is this particular barrel character, which again, I feel like it has like a bit of a fruit note to it. The like back palate just like doesn't exist on this. In a lot of bourbons where you go to swallow, like you have a building oakiness and like spiciness, and you go to swallow a little bit, and it spikes those spice and oak characters. The back palate just like doesn't exist here. It's like you hold it on the tongue, and then it doesn't really get any louder. And then you swallow it, and there's like nothing, and then the finish starts. Whereas like a lot of bourbons, I feel like has like a real good spiky, challenging element around the back palate and finish. This just like doesn't exist for. It's kind of interesting. Are we happy about this or upset? Neither. It's different. I'm not sure exactly how I feel about it. It's a little different. it may appreciate being open a little bit. It does seem it's a little bit young, but it's not like so young that it's off-putting, but you can tell it's like a little bit untamed. But it is really sweet, and it does have a little funky, fruity thing in it. And there is some pepper. I do agree with that. Finish is disappointing. We'll say that for sure. The finish is like, hello, bye. But it's not quite like anything I've ever had before. But I wouldn't recommend it over a regular regular bourbon. um, I would recommend it as like a bit of an offbeat Canadian whiskey. That's kind of how it hits. It kind of like tastes like a Canadian whiskey a little bit, but it's like a little got some little weird stuff going on. Um, Unlike this thing where like we tried this last week I think, and this just tastes like liquid sponge toffee. I could recommend this as a Canadian whiskey because I feel like no one could hate this. It just drinks like liquid sugar. It's not really that interesting. This bottle here is more interesting, but it's harder to recommend because it's not all up in the sweetness, and there's a little finish not the greatest, but this is just like straight up drinking sugar. So I don't know. It's something different. It's not my favorite, but it's not terrible. It's a mid shooter. I'd buy it just for the story. Yeah. Um, Honestly, kind of sort of wished I got the one that said that says 101 proof on it. Tabor Corn Bourbon 101. I think that's a better story, to be honest.